Hey everyone, welcome to the Discover Virginia podcast. I'm Joseph Trahan, your host for the #1 video podcast in Virginia, where we explore the rich history, vibrant culture, and iconic businesses that make our Commonwealth truly special and worth talking about. So get ready as together we discover Virginia. Hey everyone, today we have the pleasure of speaking with Ashley Causey, owner of Speech at the Beach, a speech therapy clinic designed to support the speech needs for the children in the community. Ashley and her team specialize in literacy therapy for dyslexia, feeding therapy, AAC, which is a really fun acronym we will definitely cover during today's conversation, and gestalt language processing. With over 13 years experience, Ashley is passionate about providing strength and parent and child focus on exactly how to adapt to the needs of modern times, like with screens and needs, and also all the fun stuff we hear on the TV from Miss Rachel. We're going to break it down here for you today. While she's not always with her children at the therapy office, Ashley has kids at home and uses her time to spend time with them, spending time working out, meditating, listening to podcasts, and of course, hanging out at the beach. Ashley, welcome to Discover Virginia podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we are so excited. So before we dive into everything that speech has to offer here through Speech at the Beach, I have to know, what is a speech language pathologist?
A speech language pathologist is basically another name for a therapist that helps with, it's such a wide variety of things, but can actually work with as early as infant to, as adults age and as they get older into the geriatric population.
Wow, that's a wide range.
Yes. And then we also work on such a wide variety of things like feeding, speaking, like you had mentioned, the AAC, so providing means of communication, even if people don't speak, so they could have access. So using visuals or something like an app with communication output on there. Like I said, dyslexia, we work on reading, stuttering, lisp, and we go on and on.
Wow. That's such an immersive list. And I appreciate you highlighting that. And I think the goal ultimately is to help connect people to communicate with one another, right? Regardless of what mode or medium that is.
Yes. And build confidence, I would say, too, is a huge
building
part
the confidence. Yeah. Growing up, did you or someone close to you require speech therapy?
No, but I have always had a passion with working with children.
Yeah.
I went to a daycare, and then as soon as I aged out of the daycare, I started volunteering and working at the daycare. So I've always worked with children. Originally, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. And then I saw how long that would take, and I changed my mind a bit. And I ended up shadowing like one of my mom's friends, and she was a speech language pathologist. And I thought, wow, I really like that. I'm going to look into that a little bit more. And so I ended up majoring in that in college, and then went on to get my graduate degree in speech language pathology. Very,
very cool. So just a passion early on for working with children. And then had you grown up in the Virginia Beach area, or what got you here and of course convinced you to stick around and build your life and business here?
Yeah, I grew up in Franklin, Virginia, which is very tiny. It's like a paper mill town is what it's known for. Most people in this area know when you go past it on 58, it's a little smelly. My dad would say it smells like money because everybody in the town pretty much worked there.
Sure.
And so he would come home and be like, oh, I remember being, probably kindergarten, like, oh, Dad. Whew. He's like, smells like money, baby. So I grew up in Franklin, but we grew up mainly actually going to the Outer Banks for the beach, but I've always loved the beach. It's like my favorite place in the world. So that was always my goal, to move to a beach town. And then I went to graduate school at Old Dominion, and that's what brought me closer to Norfolk, Virginia Beach area.
Yeah.
And then I've just stayed ever since.
Very, very cool. And here you are at the beach.
I know.
Speeching at the beach. Yeah, absolutely. So you had the opportunity to study speech at UNC Chapel Hill, and at Old Dominion University as well. Shout out, go Monarchs. How did those education choices really shape your path and perception towards speech therapy services?
Just getting the experiences. UNC, I just got the basics, but then once I moved to the graduate program, it's a little bit more in depth, and then you also get internships and externships. So that's where I got an externship at the Children's Hospital of King's Daughters, and that shaped so much of what I learned because I was exposed to such a wide variety of medical needs. And then I ended up, from my externship there, I ended up working at CHKD for about 9 years before I went on my own.
And when you look at those 9 years, you worked, those first few years as a speech therapist before owning your own practice. What was that experience like? And can you dive a little bit more into what it was like working at CHKD and maybe highlight the series of events that led you to decide to, ultimately start your own practice?
Yeah. Working at CHKD was a wonderful experience. I was able to basically learn anything I was interested in, or I was able to shadow other therapists. I was able to, go to the NICU and see NICU baby feeding, like video swallow studies. They have a cleft palate team there. They had so many different resources available, and I was able to get trained in a lot of the specialties that I was interested in. So that's where I got trained in literacy therapy. That's where I got trained in feeding therapy. I did ADOS testing there. So that is an assessment that speech therapists do along with the developmental pediatricians and the neurologists there. So it's kind of like a team approach. If you had concerns for your child having autism, you would start with a developmental pediatrician or a neurologist. They would refer out for ADOS testing. And then we would send that back over, and then they would use that information along with a bunch of other information to either make a diagnosis or provide other resources.
Yeah.
So that was very important information for me to have going forward and being able to start my own business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like 9 years of just more learning, right? And also
Yes.
in the trade of it versus the education piece, albeit very important. The application, I'm sure, has some dynamic elements that change.
It's huge too.
Yeah.
Just experiencing every patient is going to teach you something new.
Sure.
I would say another thing that was really great at CHKD is I worked with a lot of occupational therapists, which taught me so much about sensory processing in children. It's helped me a lot with my own children. Just that co-regulation, which I'm sure as a parent, can be very important.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more because the sensory piece is interesting too. So for those parents out there who are, unfamiliar with the terrain, or perhaps they have yet to come in contact with the OT or speech therapist, or maybe they have and they've, kind of not gotten the best experience, what does that generally provide for services for kids?
So occupational therapists in general?
Yeah,
or
and the dynamic between speech and
Okay.
OT, right? Because sometimes they're like, oh, do I need one or the other? And
Yes.
in tandem, they work really well together.
Yes, they do. So especially at CHKD, we would often do co-treats, if a child was coming in early on and kind of not having a diagnosis or needing support in some of those earlier skills, like joint attention or just body awareness, not really noticing the other person is in the room. So just getting the body to be regulated and so that they can attend to the speech therapist. So often the OT would do some kind of movement activity, and then the speech therapist would come in and say, okay, let's try a sign for more, if
Right.
that makes sense. So the OT would facilitate the movement to regulate the body, and then the speech therapist could come in and model communication or have an AAC device where we could push more or swing or whatever the activity was.
Yeah. That is so fascinating and so helpful to understand too, because it's not a one or the other, it's not a one or the other fix. It's more of like adapting to the environment that we're in for that season to allow that child to continue to, nurture and grow. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. So You've kind of answered this already, but I have it on here. Why speech at the beach? So you wanted to move closer to the beach, but then after this time, it sounds like things were going good. You could learn everything you wanted to, and then you decided to just start your own business. What are you thinking?
No,
what
totally.
What was that process like?
It was
As an entrepreneur, I know, but for the audience listening, I have to ask, what were you thinking?
Yeah, well, like we said, I had been doing it for 9 years. I was really happy there. But then I had twin girls. So I wasn't able to keep that schedule, the schedule of, I think I was working 6:45 to 4:30, something like that. I know at one point I was working like 7:30 to 6.
Yeah,
4
they
days a
start
week,
early at CHQD. Yeah.
And once I had twin infants and then they were in daycare, the inconsistency of my schedule was starting to really weigh on me, and was difficult with my job.
Yeah.
So I just started thinking about, I need to figure out something, because obviously this is going to continue. Children have a lot of needs. And then as they get into activities, how am I going to go to any activities if I'm have a really strict schedule? So just started thinking about it, and I ended up making my Instagram just kind of on the side, and was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. I started diving into that speech language pathology side of Instagram, which who knew there was one, but
yeah, there's a whole market out there. Yeah,
everything.
Absolutely.
So I started following a lot of speech therapists, and I was like, wow, there's some people with private practices. And this was earlier on. This was 2020. So when I saw that there was maybe a way to do that, I got interested in it. And then COVID hit, and everybody's world got flipped upside down. Things were changing at work anyway. We were like furloughed, and we were trying to figure out what we're going to do. And my husband ended up buying me a business license for Speech at the Beach.
There you go.
And he's in advertising and marketing. So he was like, we can do it. And I ended up connecting with another therapist in Chesapeake.
Sure.
Who had a private practice.
Okay.
And I was just like getting into that. What am I going to do? I'm such a problem solver. I'm like, I need a plan.
Absolutely.
So
especially during COVID, like
yes.
we just needed some sort of stability and consistency.
Yes.
Right?
I'm like with my
and your two daughters
are at home with me,
which they're at home now. Yeah.
And my husband's trying to work. We're in a 2-bedroom at the ocean front in one room. I'm like, what are we doing? So I would just like walk with them everywhere. We'd walk to the ocean front, walk here, walk here. But anyway, getting back to the story, I reached out to her. So I was going into, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I listened to a podcast, and they were like, you need to find people doing what you want, and you need to reach out to them.
Yeah.
Which was very uncomfortable for me. I've come out of my zone a lot with that, but I reached out to her, and she was so forthcoming. She's like, oh, you have any questions? Just ask. I'm happy to answer. She was giving me information on how to get credentialed with insurances, how to get started. We ended up talking really often, and I was still scared to make the jump because like I said, I like having a plan. I like having numbers coming in for my family, a salary,
yeah.
Of course. So I brought her lunch, and she was going to help me with some form for getting started. And she, at the end of our lunch, was like, what do you need to leave your salary and get started, to leave your current job and get started? Because I want to hire you part-time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we negotiated, and
must have been a good lunch.
It must have been a good lunch, but yeah, it was. And that was the start. She gave me that push. She gave me 2 days consistent with her where I knew what I was going to get. And then I started my private practice. I started just private pay, and I went to people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did some screenings for private schools and went into schools and supported children that way.
Gotcha. I was looking here. So that was more of the in-home care, in-school care, and that's where you go to the individuals, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha. And then over time, that changed into now where you guys are currently, right? At the brick and mortar.
Yes.
Can you walk us through that part of your journey as well? Because I'm already so excited because I found you on Instagram and we were connecting with local businesses. I was like, this must be a really cool story because Ashley has been like, even since 2020, which it's not that long ago. I mean,
Yeah.
in kid years, it's a very long time, right? It's not a lot of sleep.
Yes.
But in general, that's very, very quick. So how did that momentum continue on to lead you to say, okay, now I can do in-home to the brick and mortar?
It was a journey. It does feel really quick now. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that happen so quickly? It won't even be 2 years in our brick and mortar until July. But starting back to the going in home, yeah, so I was doing that maybe like 2 days a week, and I was working
Sure.
the other 2 days a week and then kind of growing things. And it's kind of a funny story. I ended up getting pregnant with my son pretty soon after I started with my friend Alyssa, which was a little bit surprising because we struggled to get pregnant with my twin girls. So I
Sure.
was like, maybe this was like a reduction of stress. Like, I don't really know.
It's not in the cards. Yeah.
I mean, it was great.
Yeah.
But that kind of slowed down the movement of the business a little bit.
Sure, of course.
But it was wonderful. And I had the flexibility, right? Because we had made the change. So that was probably, that was the first year of the business where I left. I was working part-time with her, and then I was on my own. And then I took some time for maternity leave and then started back in. Through this time, I was also getting credentialed with insurances because that was always my end goal. I'm really big on accessibility. Like,
Absolutely.
I always want everyone to be able to be seen or use their insurance. I've said this before, but even wealthy people like to use their insurance. Like,
yeah, it's a great tool to use. And originally, and for those that don't know the term, private pay is basically out of pocket.
Yes.
Correct. And then
Yes.
the insurance has allowed you to be able to serve more people,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was all happening. I was learning about insurance. Like, obviously, I'm a speech language pathologist. I didn't really have much background on that. So I was getting credentialed. That took a long time. So it really worked out. Once I got credentialed with insurances, it was probably around 2 years when I made the full transition to go completely on my own. And then I was doing all in-home and in school. And that was probably about 6 months to a year when I did that. And then around June, like a year and a half ago. Yeah. That's when I got the brick and mortar. And in July, one of my best friends from CHKD, she came and joined me. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, we worked together. We were like side by side, offices sharing.
Was she OT as well or speech?
She's speech. Yeah,
okay.
We're both speech. Our whole office is speech now.
Okay.
I would love to do OT eventually, but I'm still learning. Like, that's a whole different insurance codes and things. So
yeah,
hopefully long term, that will be something that we can provide too.
Okay.
Okay. So then hired her, everything kept growing, and then we started getting a waiting list. So I think we didn't hire again until a previous client's mom reached out to me and saw the growth. And she said, hey, I see all this growth. Do you need help with the office stuff? And I was starting to drown in that, because I was still doing all that. I was treating. And then I had another therapist. So that I had to do all the billing for that as well. And I was like, wow, this is perfect timing. Yes, I would love if you could help. And she had been a stay-at-home mom. She was like, I just need something for myself, like a little socialization. So that worked out so beautifully. She's been amazing. She still does all my insurance. She's actually traveling in an RV with her family, and she does it.
Oh, wow. She does it mobile.
Yeah, mobile.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's worked out really well. And then in March of the following year, we hired another speech therapist with like 20 years experience. And then in July, I hired a clinical fellow, which would be like a newer therapist. But I mean, she's been just so incredible. Got that eagerness to learn. If they
went to ODU or Longwood, you're probably in safe territory, right?
Yeah. She's been wonderful. And then I would say our biggest growth has been this past year. I was able to hire more office support staff. So one of my friends ended up helping in the office because Lynn is traveling the
Right.
world. So
somebody in person too.
yes,
Yeah.
so someone in person. She's only 2 days a week, but it just really helps with the fluidity and people feeling hurt, when you walk in, having someone to greet you. And then we hired 2 new speech therapists that I've known them all. So it's been really, really great. And everybody has brought such good energy and their own expertise.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And so it's been a quick one
amazing.
more recently.
Yeah. Ashley, thank you for sharing that too. And I, from just meeting with you, and chatting with you over the phone, like before this interview, I felt the energy as well. So I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm curious for you because it's so easy to glaze over the successes because it's overnight in this conversation, but literally what you described has been over really the past, 15 years of your career of really identifying where your strengths are and then meeting good people along the way. You had said something earlier, and I want to touch on this and ask you, what changed in your mindset from that first point when you said, I have to get out of my comfort zone, ask people, to now where you're like, hey, in order for me to be able to do this, I need to find more great people versus me just trying to figure out how to do it on my own?
I think I've done a lot of self-growth, a lot of self-work. I listen to a ton of podcasts, I do a lot of gratitude journaling. I think that's super important. I think just seeing how it has helped see more clients. And another thing I didn't mention is something that's been really transformative for me is I did a training on gestalt language processing. And so that's something that's not really well known. It's a newer thing, even for speech language pathologists. It wasn't taught to me in grad school, but it's something that I found later on in my career. And I did the training first, and it transformed how I do therapy. It's transformed progress I've seen, especially with autistic children, and which we know, autism is really prevalent. It's a really high number now. And if I can support them and use their strengths, it transformed how I do therapy. So it's very strengths-based approach. You kind of follow their lead more, and sessions before never felt natural for me. And it was always I was like, what is missing here? It always felt like a power struggle. And I was like, this just doesn't seem like the right approach for some of these children. And so once I did that training, therapy just fell into place, and it was such a more positive experience. So I'm really passionate about that training. So I've gotten every one of my employees, that's the first thing I say, okay, you're hired, and now you need to go do this 16-hour training. And I get it for them. And it's really changed their perspective on therapy too. So I think that's a huge factor in our therapy office. That's maybe a little bit different than some of the other.
That's so fascinating too. Yeah. So it's gestalt language processing.
I think you can say it either way.
Yeah. Can you describe what it entails and how it differs from more of the traditional, service models?
Yeah. So gestalt language processing is for children that communicate through echolalia or scripting. So something like hot dog, hot diggity dog. They'll sing that maybe when they see a hot dog versus traditionally we would think a child would say hot dog or eat. So when they're starting to communicate early on, but sometimes it's usually pretty common in autistic children. So sometimes you'll hear a child that is said to be non-speaking, or nonverbal is kind of the older term we would use. But then they'll bust out a song or a full script from a show, a full
a monologue or something.
Yes, exactly. A monologue, their favorite part of a show. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. You have to investigate a little bit. I'll always ask the parents, he just quoted a Lion King movie or something. And then she'll be like, oh, well, he really loves Lion King. And so and then I said, well, pay attention to when he's using that script. And it was like every time he was super excited. And so I was like, well, I think he's trying to say he's excited or he's happy. Like, let's start modeling it back to him and then saying, I'm happy. So he knows that's another way to communicate that. So that was just an example. But typically, like when you think of language development, it's called analytical language development, how you would typically think it would happen. So you would start with single words like mama, dada, ball, and then you'd add a word, right? Like big ball. Or
yeah. My wife's telling me that now with our almost 2-year-old. She's like, okay, now she's got the one word. Now you have to add the second one. Now it's the red ball or the big ball. Yeah,
exactly. And then it'll kind of add on when they turn around 3, you're going to expect like, I want ball, like a more of a 3-word phrase,
right?
And so on. So it kind of adds on. Whereas gestalt language processing, you're starting with a longer phrase. So you're starting, like a child may not have ever said a single word, but they're busting out with a CoComelon script.
Sure.
So it's a little bit confusing. And in the past, people would say, oh, that's not meaningful. Like just no movie talk. Like that's what, like I had learned that to just ignore it. But then with this training, it's like, no, sometimes it is meaningful. Like they're trying to be heard. And so with this training, it's teaching you more like, okay, let's try to figure out what they mean when they're doing this phrase. Like, what is that meaning for them?
Yeah. To better
and also
understand
just like
them.
Connect with them, like say it back to them. Like they're obviously liking it. So we recognize it. We say it back to them. We try to figure out what they're meaning by it. So we'll give them kind of a similar phrase, but with more meaning added in.
Absolutely.
And then something else we do. So I'll run through real quick the stages of gestalt language processing. So stage 1 would be the script, like a straight script. I mean, they'll even say it in the same exact tone and intonation. So the song will be like, hot dog, hot diggity dog. It's not going to be hot dog, It's exactly the way they heard it. And then it would change a little bit in stage 2. So an easier one for me to give an example of is like, if on the show it said, it's Mickey Mouse, that would be the stage 1 where it's totally echoed. And then stage 2 we would change it to like, it's a plant. It's a shoe. So we're just changing one part of it.
Yeah.
And then this is confusing. Stage 3 is almost like stage 1 in analytical language processing. So like you'd almost like take the meaning and just say the meaning. So like Mickey Mouse, you're just pointing out Mickey Mouse. Like you want them to get that word means Mickey Mouse, because before they might not always understand. They're just echoing a script. It's a little confusing.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you add a descriptor. So you could be like pillow here. So you're like adding where it is, or blue pillow. If that makes sense. So you're adding a descriptor.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you add the descriptor, and then I'm curious on the patient side. So have you seen progress with this type of modeling?
Incredible progress. Like we'll get kids that have been in traditional speech therapy using more of that analytical approach for up to 3 years, like even longer.
Right.
And they'll just be like, the parents will be like, he's just not making progress, or we just feel kind of stuck. I'm not sure what's going on, but we've kind of just been like here the whole time. And then we'll talk about like, okay, well, let's try this way where we're hearing him, we're meeting him where he is. And then it's very like we pretty much it's child-led. So we find what they're interested in, and then we use that language model during that. So if they like numbers, I don't care. Let's play with numbers the whole session, and I'm going to model that. It's actually called natural language acquisition as well. So it's a more natural approach of modeling language, but it's just we need to know how to model it. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's a new skill for parents and educators as well, and therapists.
And I relate because I've been doing that maybe 4 years, and I still am like, ooh, it's different. than how I had done it for so long. And then just to wrap that up, the last stage would be adding in some actions. So you're both of this, the approaches are going to get to the same spot, but it's just the way you do it. So, at the end, you want your child to be able to communicate in her own words, right? So daddy is at work or daddy's cooking dinner. Yeah. And then that would also be like what you would hear at stage 4. Daddy's cooking food. Daddy's cooking dinner.
All that from a movie quote or a line from something they like.
It kind of starts from there.
That's so interesting. Yeah. But that's kind of the gateway to the conversation piece too.
Exactly.
Could you summarize those 4 real quick as well? Yeah.
So gestalt language processing would start with echolalia or scripting exactly as it is heard from either a movie. It can be from the parent as well. Yeah. And then in stage 2, it would change just one part of the gestalt or chunk of language. So for example, if the original chunk was it's Mickey Mouse, we would change it to it's a water bottle or it's a shoe. And then stage 3, you're really pulling out the meaning of the word. So you would do a lot of pointing to items and naming it. So shoe. And it's a lot more purposeful. So you'll notice when they're in this stage, they'll slow down, which is really interesting because in the beginning, they're more like, it's Mickey Mouse, like quick. And then it'll pull out Mickey Mouse shoe. And then you'll add an adjective or a descriptor. So like shoe, black. And then in stage 4, you would add in action words, and that's where they would have self-generated language. So they're coming up with the language on their own, and you might hear some grammatical errors like daddy goed home because it's their own language. If they're echoing something, it's probably going to be perfect grammar because they've heard it from a show or something.
Wow, that is so fascinating. Ashley, thank you for breaking that down. I know your practice specializes in adding additional values that we wouldn't traditionally see outside in the standard speech therapy world. Another one of the services that you offer as well that I wanted to talk about was the augmentative and alternative communication model, shortly known as AAC. Can you walk us through the process you have and the support it provides to your clients when it comes to the AAC model?
Yes. So AAC really is anything other than verbal speech that we use for communication. So it can be writing, signing, gesturing, pictures, texting, really. But we use devices. We get devices usually through insurance for children that are not communicating yet, or even if they are communicating, but they can't communicate everything that they can understand, which happens often, especially if you have severe articulation disorder or apraxia, which is when you're having trouble with the motor movements. So your brain knows exactly what you want to say, but your mouth cannot formulate it. So can you imagine having all these thoughts inside without being able to express it or trying to express it and no one can understand you?
Yeah.
So
I think I understand why that leads to some tantrums sometimes, right? Or some frustration involved. Yeah.
So these devices, it's basically like a souped up iPad. And then we trial different applications, which have just different systems to see which one they like the best. So they all have different pictures and output. So they'll have, the iPad will be there and then they'll have pictures. Should have brought one. And then you push the button and it'll say something. So if it's a picture of food, you can go into the folder of food and then we can personalize it with all of their favorite foods. And so they can go in and push pizza. And then mom knows, oh, they want to eat pizza now. Whereas they might not be able to say that verbally.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So this is really, it's more than just an iPad though. So it's a way to continue to allow the child to adapt and communicate. Now is the goal for them to always have the device, or does it something that they could like wean off of as they continue to like progress in their communication efforts?
Yeah, I think it's different for every child. Sometimes, especially for those ones with severe articulation or apraxia, sometimes as they're getting the intense therapy for the articulation and apraxia, they'll need it to support them. But once they've made a lot of gains in the ability to verbally produce like the sounds, they don't need it anymore.
Sure.
There's been a lot of information from autistic adults that says that they have times where verbal speech is easy for them and times where it is not. So it's nice I would think, for them to always have that support available to them, because if they're really struggling or having a bad day or having a moment like at a grocery store and lights are in their face and people are trying to talk to them and they're really sensory overwhelmed, it might be a time where they would need something to be like, they could push one button and be like, I'm having a really hard time, like, please give me a second or something.
Right.
And then there's some autistic adults that only use AAC, don't speak.
So it's more so of a case by case. It's not a progression away from the device, but more so of how's that device leading to help them cope and manage and also interact with their community as well. Because you mentioned this and I had no idea. So we're going to dive into the AAC next. Yeah. It's actually integrated through our local parks here in the Virginia Beach area as well. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So I guess it's been about 2 years ago now. A big initiative of mine was to try to get AAC boards in some of the parks. So I worked with the Virginia Beach Parks and Rec Foundation to get 11 boards, and they were sponsored by local businesses in the community, which is, I think, even more special.
That's incredible. Yeah.
So they're basically, we can also probably pull an image of this, but they're big signs with visuals of different things that a child would maybe need to communicate at the park. So I want to swing, or I'm thirsty, I need a drink, or I need to go to the bathroom. Even like yes, no, hi, things like that. So, and children that I work with especially, or that have been in therapy, they recognize the visuals and they will, like I've gotten pictures from families, like they were so excited to have access.
These right here from Wavy 10.
Yes, they were so excited to see the board. They ran right up to it and showed me they want to go swing. So I think, if your child has never needed something like that, it might not be as meaningful, but.
You're in the article. I pulled up the perfect one. So the AAC really, I think the boards, that's an amazing that you did that, because it not only brings awareness to it, but also empowers the children to play, because that's where kids go to hang out, is at the park, right?
Exactly.
And they can be themselves.
And for me, I am always thinking, how can I teach my children how to be more inclusive? And there we go. Oh, some kids need to use pictures to communicate.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk to this little guy over here. He's trying to tell you something. And my daughters ride the bus near my office every day, so we talk about it every day. I'm like, see this device? Yeah, some kids can't communicate. They use this to talk. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, and just getting her exposure to that too, and making it more inclusive.
Yep,
I love that. That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing all that, Ashley. This is so fascinating. So I want to, as we wrap up this section of our conversation, I want to ask you, with all the various speech services out there in your practice and outside of it, and all the strategies and Instagram profiles, what's one thing that you fundamentally believe about the work that you do and the practice that is true that not everyone may agree with?
I was actually going to mention this with the AAC. So there's a huge myth about AAC. A lot of families are hesitant to use that for their child because they think their child will not speak because of it. And there's been tons of research that says that's just not true. So that's something I'm really passionate about. If anything, it's going to help your child speak, because they're getting models every time they push what they want. It's saying pizza, pizza, pizza every time. And they'll hear it, and there's no pressure, right? There's not someone saying, say pizza if you want pizza. It's just a natural model. So if anything, they're going to be more willing to communicate.
Oh, that's interesting too, because so the myth is surrounding that the AAC is essentially the AAC model of using a device is kind of
like replacing
verbal,
speech.
kind of like using as maybe a crutch or something like that.
Yeah, like it's gonna just make them lazy or something like that. That's kind of what I will hear sometimes, and it's like it's much harder to have to go get your device and like sequence in your brain. What do I want to say now? Okay, I found it. Okay, I'm gonna find the next word. Like if a child could verbally speak, I think that they would.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we'll like, what are you going to do if they don't ever verbally speak? I'm like, well, now they have an amazing way to communicate with you and everyone around them, and they can get their thoughts out. Isn't that better than not?
Right.
That's just my take.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we will be talking about life here in Virginia Beach.
Yeah, the best.
Hey everyone, Michael here from behind the camera. Right now we're taking a quick break to acknowledge and thank our wonderful studio host, Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group. When it comes to getting information and guidance on financing your next home purchase, we recommend talking with Atlantic Bay. They are one of the original lending institutions in our home city of Virginia Beach, and have a long resume of getting the job done well and making your home buying experience more enjoyable. So, if you're looking to experience Virginia full-time, consider checking them out today at www.atlanticbay.com. Disclosure: loan programs may change at any time with or without notice. Information deemed reliable but not guaranteed. All loans subject to income verification, credit approval, and property appraisal. Not a commitment to lend. Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group, LLC, NMLS number 72043, NMLSconsumeraccess.org is an equal housing lender. And now, back to today's show.
All right, Ashley, we're going to be talking about life in Virginia Beach. As a realtor, I love this subject. And also as a business owner, it's really cool to, highlight what makes Virginia Beach and the surrounding area just a great place to live and work. You ready to dive in?
Yes.
Awesome. So Ashley, how many years have you lived in Virginia Beach so far?
At least 14. Probably 15
15 years. Okay. Out of all those years, have you ever run out of things to do?
No.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, that's the amazing part about this city. What are some of the benefits of living in Virginia Beach when it comes to daily life and also recreational activities for the locals?
I would say I've lived in a few different areas of Virginia Beach, and every section has close proximity to everything that you need.
Yeah.
So,
do you mind shouting out some of those neighborhoods?
Yeah. So I lived close to the Shadow Lawn area, more like 12th Street of the oceanfront. And there you could walk to restaurants, coffee shops, ride your bike down to the boardwalk, the oceanfront. Grocery stores are easy. I talk to people from big cities, and it's always like a big event to just go to the grocery store. So little things like that. Work has never been too far for me.
Because Shadow Lawn is, you're within 2 miles from the oceanfront boardwalk area? Yeah, you're very close. Yeah.
And then I'm more over the bridge, like General Booth area now. Because we needed a little more space. I have 3 kids. So it's been interesting, like exploring that area. Because I do think in Virginia Beach, you kind of get like in your
there's definitely little pockets.
Yeah. And then you get comfortable there and you're like, oh, I'm going to just go to my same favorite place. So it's been cool checking out some new places over where I am now. And there's just so many, we were talking about this earlier, but so many awesome parks. So Grom down at the oceanfront is a really accessible park. It's wheelchair accessible, so that's really cool right on the boardwalk.
And it leads into the beach, right? Mm-hmm. There's no grass, it's just sand, which is kind of like the best benefit of the beach park. Yeah.
And then Red Wing Park, we just went to the Cherry Blossom Festival.
That was amazing. Yeah. If you missed it, sorry. But if you want to learn more about all the cool Virginia Beach stuff, we actually have a Facebook group called Discover Virginia Beach. So just go on to Facebook, join that. And I'm there every day answering questions and go through all the fun stuff. So you don't have to worry about, your AI data getting stolen or whatever happens on Google. Just come hang out with us locals. Anyways.
I need to join that.
Yeah, absolutely. Red Wing Park, because that also has one of the largest dog parks in Virginia Beach as well.
Yeah.
Which is amazing for all my dog friends out there. I'm allergic, but I'm like, take your dog there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has 2 parks, 2 children's playgrounds and the Japanese garden all in the same little area. So that's a really good one. And one of the AAC boards is there.
Do you do the Fort Story? Have you ever done the Fort Story tour as well? Love the lighthouse?
I think I did do that. It's been a while, but
yeah,
there's so much to do in the area. We really like New Realm Brewery.
New Realm Brewing?
Because of that, they have huge outdoor space, so it's actually great to take kids there. We take our kids there a lot.
Very cool. Yeah. What's your go-to brew or ale that you enjoy at New Realm?
Allagash White, I think.
Allagash White,
there.
okay.
I'm really bad with knowing what beers I like. Hefeweizens is
That's
what I
okay.
like.
That's okay. I used to go to Wasserhahn and all the names would confuse me. So I'm just asking now, do you have a Pilsner? Do you have something like a Pilsner?
That's what I just
don't give me a Bud Light. Please do not give me anything like that. Very cool. What's your favorite neighborhood in Virginia Beach if you had to pick one? I mean, there's 46, so it's tough.
Oh, that's so hard.
I don't know if this will help, but I'll up the ante. If you had to live in one neighborhood or only like live and work and play in one area of Virginia Beach for the rest of your time in the city, which one would you pick?
I mean, if I had all the money in the world, probably the North End.
Okay, I was about to say North End or Croatan.
Yeah, like a house right on the beach.
Yeah. Which you can still get, by the way. There's not any land left, but they have some in Sandbridge as well, like just an empty lot. It's like 900,000, but if you got the budget, you can build and you still can do your beach home. So on the more realistic side, if there's one thing that you could change about the city, what would you change? I'll say realist and maybe a little bit of pessimistic side,
Okay.
There's one thing you could fix or change about the city.
Sometimes I wish there was more like biking accessibility.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
You
hear that, Bobby? Yep. Shout out to Bobby Dyer, Mayor of Virginia Beach.
Yeah, I think continuing to just that accessibility. Like
it's so big because the city is so big. Like there's such a big need for it. Yeah. I won't jump on my tangent there, but I agree.
Yeah.
More bikes. Yeah. What's if someone was looking to move to Virginia Beach, what's one piece of knowledge or advice you would want them to have before moving here?
I think just knowing about all the different places, like all the cool restaurants, all the different things for your kids to do. I think that's kind of overlooked sometimes. Like there's a ton that you can do outside with your kids, which is really great. So maybe joining your Facebook group. I don't know.
I love it. Yeah, that is amazing. Ashley, thank you for that. And we would love to give you an opportunity to roll out the red carpet and share where folks can connect with you. But before we do that, you have to go through some rapid fire questions.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Are you up for a challenge?
Okay, I'm nervous.
All right. Nothing to be nervous about. Just some quick questions here. So first question here. Does coffee count as an essential SLP survival tool?
Yes.
I figured as much. Are tongue twisters overrated as a therapy tool?
Yes.
Are parents the biggest help or the biggest hurdle when it comes to child therapy progress?
That's different for every kid.
Yeah.
I would say.
Okay.
Can be the biggest help.
Yeah, can be the biggest help.
Can be.
I love that. Because every parent, including parents like me who need a lot of coaching, we can do it.
But also, I'm a parent now. So I feel like I used to be like, go home and do 50 of these. And now I'm like, okay, when you're making dinner, put this on the fridge. And every time they ask for a snack, make them say it. Like my advice is much more realistic.
Yeah,
like
it's more practical.
Make it more routine in your routine that you already do, or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
And this goes over to the AAC. So you've already answered this kind of, but for the shorts reel, this will be a good one. Should SLPs rely more on tech tools or hands-on therapy?
I always like to do a mix, and it also depends on the child. If I can get a child more hands-on with me, I'm going to do that. And maybe use AAC, which is a lot different than like screen time.
Right.
But if a child is really only engaged in screen time, I'll use it as a starting place for us to connect and then transition away from it as we build that relationship.
Very cool. Last one for you. What is more likely to be a direct competitor of your role and job as a speech therapist? Miss Rachel or AI?
I don't think either one could really like replace a speech therapist, because it's like, I would say probably Miss Rachel, just because she's the most, I guess, like us and
Sure.
in her models and things. She learned a lot of her information from her son's speech therapist. So she does do a great job.
Yeah, she's like me. I found a speech therapist and I just take all their knowledge and apply it. Yeah.
And that, I mean, especially when they're younger, that's the goal, right? You're with them a lot more than we are. So we want to train you guys on how to communicate best and support your child at home. But I would say, like, I would hope that the Miss Rachel thing, the parents are also like watching, getting the tips, and then carrying it over with the child, not just, let's just put on Miss Rachel for 8 hours.
Yeah, because I need to take a break, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I get it. I'm all about when you need to, you take a break, you get your mental health in order, you cook dinner. It's okay if they watch 30 minutes of Miss Rachel while you're cooking dinner, or even like a safety thing, like I need to take a shower.
Right.
Okay, sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ashley, you have made it to the end of the rapid fire question section. Congratulations. There's
Thank
nothing
you.
left to do but roll out the red carpet. This camera here,
Okay.
let the audience know where they can get to, where they can go to get connected with you and hear and get the services that you offer at Speech at the Beach.
Okay. So you can find me on Instagram. My name is Speech in VA Beach, Speech in Virginia Beach. And our office is located in Hilltop of Virginia Beach. It's 1630 Donna Drive, over by Walmart and Target. And you can check out our website. It has contact information and our phone number.
Awesome. Ashley, thank you so much for the conversation. We appreciate it.
It was great.